I know this is football season, right? Kind of winding down. And I'm a Packer fan. But what are the odds of the Packers beating the Cowboys this afternoon? Not very good. Oh, here we are, the coldest Sunday of the year. What are the odds of a 70-degree temperatures in the middle of January? Or frost in July? What are the odds of winning the lottery or living to be 100? Not good. Our expectations color our lives and shape how we live. We look at what has happened in the past. We consult the experts. We calculate the odds. We make our plans. But what if our expectations are wrong? We expect that the game is lost, so we turn off the TV and miss the fourth quarter comeback. Expecting no traffic, we cross the street, never bothering to look. But then we hear the sound of screeching tires and blaring horns. We expected warm temperatures in July, but we never checked the weather forecast. And guess what? We shivered on our summer vacation. We expected a cold shoulder and a menacing stare. We were sure that she would never have anything to do with us again. Then, unexpectedly, we discover a written apology in an unopened letter that we were about to throw in the garbage. Misled by our incorrect expectations, we realize what a mistake we have made. Well, the same thing happened to Nathanael in today's gospel. His friend Philip wanted him to meet Jesus. Philip is convinced that Jesus is the Messiah, the one for whom Israel had been waiting. But Nathanael disagrees. Jesus does not fit the template. Jesus is not what he expected. And Nathanael snarks. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? You know, Nazareth is your proverbial hick town. You know those towns, the wide spot in the road and don't blink your eyes when passing through because you might miss it sort of town. We assume that, well, God doesn't operate this way. If God is going to show up, it will not be like this. Just look at our celebrity-driven culture, where we expect important people to come from important places. Nathanael expects that God will not waste his time and send the chosen one from a place about as impressive as... Maybe you have never even heard of it. It's up there in the northwest corner of Boone County. Thorntown. Thorntown. Nathanael is a lot like Eli in today's first reading. Both assume that God would only show up in a flashy display of power. Eli could not believe that God would bother to speak to a still, green behind the ears kid named Samuel. Nathanael could not believe that the Messiah could come from a hick town like Nazareth. But Nathanael is impressed when Jesus shows off his supernatural power. They had never met, yet Jesus knows him. Something very special about his person when he says of Nathanael, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Stunned by the supernatural knowledge, Nathanael asks, "Where did you get to know me? How did Jesus ever know that I was like that?" And then Jesus impresses him with even more amazing knowledge. For he had seen Nathanael under a fig tree before Philip had ever introduced him. Wow, this guy is something special. Nathanael is impressed, and he declares, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." But Jesus is not impressed. If Nathanael believed this, because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree, what is so great about that? Who doesn't believe that God is powerful and mighty? I mean, even the devil believes that about God. Even the devil believes such historical facts about Jesus. Nathanael is hardly in good company here. You know, Nathanael is a lot like us. When we wrongly assume that God cannot be God if God is not flexing his muscles, working miracles, and showing that God is more powerful than anyone else. Like Nathanael, we naively assume that it is good news that God knows everything about us. But is it? Can it really be good news that God can see us even when we think we are distant, out of sight, and under the proverbial fig tree? What if what Jesus sees is not so great? What if Jesus can truly see what is in our hearts and minds when we are angry and jealous, petty and petulant? What if Jesus is able to see all the secrets that we have hidden in our closet? Oh, that sounds like bad news. Because if we, like Nathanael, been caught only looking out for ourselves, or trouble. Now, Nathanael was ready to blow off Philip. Philip doesn't know that nothing good can come out of Nazareth. How can Philip believe that this country bumpkin is the Messiah for whom Israel had been waiting? But surprisingly, unexpectedly, Nathanael was right. Nothing ever good could come out of this place. For Nathanael can never hope to find a fig tree so far away that Jesus could never see him. Nathanael will never be able to escape the ever-present and prying eyes of God. That is not good news. Nathanael must have expected the worst. But just when Nathanael expects Jesus to bust him in the chops, Jesus does something utterly unexpected. Instead of piling on, Jesus refers Nathanael to another story where a sinner also got busted. It was the story that every Jew knew, the story of Jacob. Do you remember the story of Jacob from the book of Genesis? Jacob was a cheat and a liar. He stole from his brother. He deceived his father, and he fled for his life. Exhausted and tired of running, he collapsed at Bethel and fell asleep. And then, in the middle of the night, he dreams of a ladder connecting heaven and earth, on which angels were ascending and descending. He had escaped his family, but he could not escape God. He was afraid because he knew that God knew what he had done. But just when he expected God to pop him in the chops, God unexpectedly offers Jacob a promise. The same wonderful promise that God had given to Jacob's father and grandfather, Isaac and Abraham. Even though Jacob had been treacherous and despicable, there was no way that he could ever flee the love of God. Jesus reminds Nathanael of this story because Jesus now gives to Nathanael the same unexpected and undeserved kindness that God has given to Jacob. As the Gospel of John unfolds, Jesus will literally become the ladder that Jacob had seen in his dream connecting heaven and earth. Jesus will become the one who will bring heaven to earth and pour God's mercy out on sinners like Nathanael. Nathanael thought he had seen Jesus do great things when Jesus miraculously knew about him and saw him under the fig tree. But Jesus tells Nathanael, Nathanael, you ain't seen nothing yet. Nathanael will see even greater things than this when this one from Nazareth, Nazareth of all places, connects heaven and earth by going to the cross and the empty tomb in order to forgive those who ought to be busted. And there, of all places, God shows himself to be the Son of God and the King of Israel. God's love comes to us just as unexpectedly. We expect God to come with displays of power, miraculously intervening in the disappearance of a dreaded disease, or answering our prayers when everyone else had given up, or turning our failures into successes, and certainly giving everyone what they deserve, especially us, of course, us, who deserve only the best. Oh, that old nursery rhyme is certainly true of us, isn't it? Little Jack Horner sat in a corner eating his Christmas pie. And he put in his thumb and pulled out a plum and said, "What a good boy am I." If that is what we expect, we will be disappointed. For when God shows up, he does not come to congratulate us for being such good boys and girls. He comes with his grace and mercy for boys and girls who deserve to be sent to the corner and crowned with a dunce cap. God comes unexpectedly, connecting heaven and earth in that ordinary carpenter from Nazareth. In ordinary words of forgiveness, spoken by ordinary humans. In ordinary water poured from the font, in ordinary bread broken, in ordinary wine poured at an ordinary table, all in the midst of our too ordinary lives, of which we are often ashamed and embarrassed. But when he comes, our lives are unexpectedly changed. We now have different expectations. We now can see what had previously been hidden. Like Nathanael, we now can see that something good, something very good, can come from places like Nazareth. We are now able to live our lives with a whole new set of assumptions. We are sinners who've been forgiven. We are the broken who've been healed. We are the anxious who have been comforted. We are the flawed and guilty who are the apple of God's eye. And we are no longer willing to live our lives as we did before. It can no longer be business as usual. We now can see Jesus in the Nazareths of this world. Jesus is there in the poor, in the naked, in the hungry, in the thirsty, in the imprisoned, in the broken, in the crippled, and in all those who cry out in anguish. Jesus is there begging us to welcome him. Before, we would never have seen him in such places. But now we do. Now we see him. Now we follow him. Now we no longer ask, can anything good come out of Nazareth? For now we know that in the very one from Nazareth, we have met the unexpected love of God. And for that good news, what more can we say? That thanks be to God. Amen.